In a delicate tapestry of adolescence, mental health is a thread that weaves resilience, growth, and self discovery. Hello, and welcome to our brand new episode of Adolescence Unfiltered, where we bring to you true talks and unfiltered stories. This podcast is brought to you by the Health and Family Welfare Department, Meghalaya. I am your host, Evangeline. And this is a continuation of an episode that we've already had with the teenagers. And this time we have with us two experts who will be joining us on this show and will be sharing their views on mental health. So if you would just please introduce yourself.
So hello everyone, my name is Wana Simle. I work as a program coordinator under the National Mental Health Program. This falls under the National Health Mission, and basically I foresee the work under District Mental Health Program.
Hi everyone, I'm Jose. I'm a psychologist. I actually work with the social welfare department, but I'm also placed in Civil Hospital Shillong as a psychologist.
Okay, it's so nice to have you guys with us today. Thank you so much for being here. So we'll just get right into our discussion for today, that is mental health. You coming from you being experts in your background. I mean, we've had episodes with teenagers and they've shared their views on mental health and what they usually face with. So I want to know from your perspective now, what is exactly mental health and why is it important for teenagers?
I mean, when we talk about mental health, there are so many definitions of it, but when we stick to the one given by the World Health Organization, basically it talks about well-being, right? It's a state of well-being, the ability of the individual to contribute to society, to interact with others, have meaningful relationships. So that comprises of what mental health is.
Okay.
Yeah. What else was
Basically that, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, this is basically due to personal experiences as well. I've always kind of associated mental health to the feelings of safety,
Okay.
And
Yeah.
like I said, it's due to personal experiences as well.
Yeah. So why is it important for teenagers to understand what is mental health and why is it important for them to be, I mean, not just for teenagers, why is it important for all of us to be mentally wealthy and mentally fit, I'll say?
Yeah. So like in the definition itself, it was mentioned that mental health, when we have good mental health, it allows us to have meaningful relationships. We're able to contribute to society. We're able to be resilient. So when we do encounter any adversities, we're able to bounce back. Right?
Yes.
So having good mental health is essential for everyone, and even for teenagers as well.
Yeah. And mental health actually, actually also kind of impacts our physical health. That's why it's also so important. There's a relation between those two, which some people usually tend to not know or forget.
Yes. So how would you indicate a person, like how would you recognize a person who is mentally fit and one who isn't? What are the indicators?
This will go back to the definition again.
Yes.
But when you look at a person who has good mental health, again, they're resilient, they're able to cope with adversities and all of that.
And there are two different concepts.
Yeah, so when we talk about mental health and mental illness, these are two different constructs, right? They're not the same. Because when we talk about mental health, it affects our emotional, our psychological state, it affects our social well-being, right? So when we look at mental illness, mental health does not mean mental illness. Of course, bad mental health, poor mental health will lead to mental illness. But these are two different things, because when we talk about mental illness, we have to look into the impairment part, right? So basically, a person with mental illness will have impairment in different aspects of their life. So like their social, their occupational aspect.
Okay.
Yeah, it lies in the dysfunction. Something has to go wrong for it to be classified as a mental illness. There's a dysfunction element there.
So what are the example of a mental health and then a mental illness?
Okay.
You said there's a difference between the two, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. That's what she's saying. It lies in the dysfunction, okay? So it might be that someone might be experiencing anxiety, but it's not actually anxiety disorder. It could just be in terms of normal variance, in terms of human behavior and hardships, but it's still normal anxiety,
Yeah.
But when we call it as anxiety or disorder or this generalized anxiety disorder, it's when we're not able to this function. The anxiety is so pervasive that we're not able to function in our school life, our personal life, our whatever aspect of your life. We're not able to function. This anxiety is so pervasive that you're not able to just be, I guess, more.
Yeah.
So in our previous discussions with these kids, I've asked them what are the common problems they face as teenagers. So one was stress and anxiety. Those are the two common problems they go through. So you being experts in your field, I know you've had a lot of encounters or a lot of experiences dealing with these teenagers. So what kinds of problem do they come up to you with?
No, what they've shared, I think maybe in previous podcasts, right? So it's true, actually, it's your stress and anxiety, your depression. And this is something that has been very highlighted, very well, documented very well in literature as well. It's your stress, your anxiety, your depression. And also something that is not really talked about. It is very something that's very hush-hush kind of a thing,
Yeah.
very secretive, is your eating disorders. Okay. Then there's like your, we can go into the technical part of it, but let's just skip that for now.
Yeah.
But it's your eating disorders, and there's something that is usually not talked about. It's very secretive, done in a very hush-hush manners. And although it is said that it is more kind of seen in girls, even in boys also, it does happen. But the thing is, with boys, it's a little bit more secretive. More. Why? Because eating disorder is usually seen as a feminine kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So if they're going to come and talk about that, it will be
Yeah.
like, oh, no, am I not manly? I'm not a man. They'll
Yeah.
think at it
So
as,
there's always that
as a,
stereotype.
yeah, a feminine kind of an issue. That's why.
Do you agree to that?
Of course not.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, problems like mental health, I've said this in the previous, knows no gender, right? If it affects you, it affects you. So going through these problems, that does not necessarily indicate that you're weak, right? So
Yeah, and it knows
speaking,
no gender, and it's going to affect us as well as professionals.
Yeah.
Just because we're mental health professionals doesn't mean that
yeah,
it's not going to
it's not
affect
going
us
to
as
happen
well.
to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So when we speak about eating disorders, right, it's a very big issue. I don't know how many teenagers have you come across coming to you with eating disorders. I mean, I've never come personally across people going through mental disorders, but I've heard stories like they would just not eat their meals and then it would pass off as, oh, she's just trying to lose weight, or she's just afraid of gaining weight, or she's just trying to look a certain way, maybe influenced by social media, because we have this standard of beauty that we're following, which is so unrealistic and that it affects mentally, right? So do you think does social media play a role in that sense, or do you think that is like a whole, there are other factors leading to eating disorders?
I think social media is one of those factors, right? I think social media does play a role in because when you go through social media, you see all these people in like different shapes and
Yeah.
the likes they have, the followers they have, and there's a standard of beauty, like you said,
Yeah,
the standard of
standard
beauty.
beauty.
So yes, I think social media does have an impact. It does play a role in these kind of situations, especially with eating disorder. Yeah.
What are the other factors that could lead to such an issue?
Okay, to answer that, let's just talk about the causes kind of
Yeah.
thing, more so that we will be better able to
So
understand.
causes of mental
Yeah,
health in
yeah, yeah.
general. Yeah.
You want to go? Should I?
Go ahead.
No, so we're talking about the causes of mental illness. It's always very important for us to kind of understand that it's not just all up in here. Okay, so there are certain causes. It's usually the interplay between your biological factors. This could be your your neurotransmitter imbalance that is being kind of implicated, or certain genetic factors playing a role. There's also your social factors, your ability to kind of maintain friendships or have friendships. Then there's also your psychological factors, your kind of personality, your temperament that you have, that kind of plays a role. And when we're trying to understand causes of mental illness, there's something called as the diathesis stress model,
Okay.
in which there's a certain predisposition that's going to kind of like kind of there's a disposition,
Yeah.
and if there's certain dispositions and the stress, then that could lead to a mental illness.
Yeah.
So your predisposition or your vulnerabilities or susceptibilities could be various things. It could be your social media that could
Yeah.
kind of act as a stressor, and if you have these certain vulnerabilities, it could lead to a mental illness.
Okay. So what are the common mental health challenges that teenagers face?
Yeah, what I've seen in my workplace is usually this heat, the depression, anxiety, and especially nowadays, and the people I work with
Yeah.
usually say that ever since COVID happened, this anxiety has really kind of
Stepped up.
stepped up a lot, especially in teenagers, kind. And this could be various reasons as well. This could be due to academics,
Pressure.
due to unhealthy family environments. It could be due to many things. We can always look at it, but it's always going to be unique to
Yeah.
a person's experience as well. More.
Yeah.
So, how would you, since teenagers is known as a phase of being very rebellious, and there's these mood swings, and there's a huge chemical imbalance in their nature, and they're like very up and down, up and down. So, how would one differentiate between that and that a teen is actually going through a mental health issue?
I think again that comes to that impairment, right? So we have, because going through mood swings, sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're happy. That's very normal, right? Those are normal emotions. But it becomes a problem only when there is impairment in some areas of your life.
Okay.
So, let's say like you start, as a person, maybe you don't want to meet people, you don't want to eat, you know, you don't want to go to school, you're maybe not doing well in school. Your relationships with people are, you're not really maintaining them. So we have to look into these different areas, and when these certain areas in your life are impacted, that's when that is when it is a problem.
Yeah, and we're humans, right? We're going to experience a range of emotions.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be able to experience happiness every time, right? This 365 days of happiness is not going to be it, And it's important to understand that our acceptance of all kind of emotions are much more realistic and much more healthier for our mental health.
Because I feel we tend to shut off our emotions on how we actually feel, and there's a contradictory when you say you should speak about what you feel, like we've said this in previous, but then when you actually do, she's just seeking attention, or why is she telling people how she feels? Nobody wants to know what she's going through, or why does she have to speak about it so openly?
And this attention seeking part that we talk about, that we always kind of call people when we're kind of experiencing mental health problems. To an extent, it's quite true. Why? I'm not saying that, it's bad, because this kind of attention seeking that we're saying, it's true because it's that kind of last signal for help. So they're doing that so that someone could actually see that they're asking for help. That's why, Ken. So this kind, when you see that, I think it's important, instead of calling them attention seeking, maybe kind of meet the person where they are in terms of their internal world experiences, and maybe kind of encourage them to seek help rather than shaming them for their kind of experiences.
Basically, show empathy for people.
Yeah.
Some empathy.
Exactly.
Just look at the comment section for Instagram when
I
people post
just reels
So
of them
quick.
crying or talking about their emotion, they're like dragged through the mud.
Exactly.
And then on the other side, they're like, you should speak about what you feel. And then when a person
And when they do that, it's like,
why is
I'm
he?
going to put you up on the stick and burn you, kind of a thing.
Yeah. So that is mainly because of the social stigma that surrounds mental health, right? There's a lot surrounding mental health, like it doesn't exist, or people who are suffering through mental health are not normal people, or they're not normal functioning human being in the society, which is like, how can we break the stigma around mental health?
So when we talk about the stigma, we have to understand, why does stigma exist in the first place? So when stigma is there, it's because there's a lack of understanding, or there's this fear, especially with media, social media, and the way they represent. Sometimes they may represent mental illness in a very negative way, right? Or in an accurate representation of what mental illness is. And these can sometimes, impact that stigma. They can actually add to that stigma. Okay, so we first have to understand what is mental health. We have to be clear of that, and then people, what I've actually seen is that when you have, sometimes in your family, let's say you have someone who is who has maybe intellectual disability or something like that, they think that it's a punishment. It's punishment from God, or because of they've done some wrongdoing.
And we've seen this while we were kind of interacting with people during our course of study, right?
Like it's a sin, or it's like that. So they don't really understand what it is. So therefore, that stigma is there. So lack of understanding.
Yeah. And since we're talking about the stigma, I'm just going to bring something in here. When I was doing my research during my master's, I remember I was interviewing these early 20s young adults, basically. And I was talking about stigma, and why does that stigma exist? They were basically the questions were phrased a little bit better than But then I remember this one answer that this guy gave, it's still stuck to my head till now, where he basically said that every one of us wants to be treated normal. Okay? And then when we're kind of experiencing our not experience when we're kind of
Going-
showing people our mental health condition, that normal part gets taken away.
Yeah.
If then we could be treated differently, and if we're treated differently, then how can we be normal? So that was he was saying, and I was like, damn, that's true, dude. But obviously, I didn't say that during the interview.
But you're saying it now. It's okay. It's good.
Yeah.
So, as teenagers, right? Of course, the first person a teen would run into is if they had any problems, they would run to their friends. So, if they were to suffer from mental health problems, they would obviously go to their friends. But how could their friends help a fellow teen going through mental health, navigate through this stage of life?
So first of all, don't be judgmental. I think again, empathy. So empathy, basically, if you see what is empathy, it's the ability to put yourself into someone's shoes. So you have to be empathetic towards the person. Don't be judgmental, and also please refer them to a mental health professional, because the thing is, sometimes as people we don't have the capacity to take on whatever you're saying. Sometimes you're sharing and we don't have that capacity. So let's say you have symptoms of depression, right, and you're sharing that with me, and maybe I'm also going through something, and so I keep on listening and venting it out to me, and I might also get I might also not get sorry, I might also suffer from depression. So that's actually
They might not,
something.
they might not be in that mental space to be
Yeah.
able to handle your
Yeah.
kind of traumatic
Problems.
experiences they might go through. That's something that's been very common in pop culture movement right now, where they're calling it as trauma dumping. Like it's not actually clinical.
Yeah, it's
A
just
clinical term, it's just something that
dumping
has
your-
come up
Yeah.
now in popular culture, something called trauma dumping, in which people are kind of sharing their kind of bad experiences to others, to the listener, but that listener is not in this mental capacity to
space.
be able to handle
Yeah.
their bad experiences, and that's just going to throw them off the rails and
Yeah.
keep them they'll just be dysregulated basically.
So, what are the self-care method that a teen could use when they are going through these up and downs in life, or the like self-care tips and personal diagnosis?
Self-diagnosis.
Self-diagnosis.
That's like two different things.
Yeah.
You talk about self-care.
So basically, self-care is important for everyone, right? So self-care it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
It's just making time for yourself. So it might be skincare routine, right? That might help some people. It might be just doing nothing, but self-care is just making time for yourself. Okay, away from books, away from work, away from other responsibilities, but just making time for you. So what
I
kind
often forget that.
yeah. Sometimes we do forget that. We don't really remember like to take care of ourselves. But self-care basically means to take care of yourself and do the things that make you feel calm. Something like that. Yeah.
And why we're stressing on why this self-care is so important, because it kind of promotes well-being.
Yeah.
If we're kind of like able to find time in our daily lives to take care of ourselves, it kind of promotes well-being. It kind of protects us from certain things. Okay, and self-care is so important for either. Like sometimes when I'm working with clients and they're sharing the different experiences. Like Ani, hable ka ni, hable ka tayo, I have to do this, have to do this. And then at times I ask them questions like, so what about yourself? Have you been taking care of yourself lately? And that kind of throws them, am I doing that? It's so new to some of them.
Yeah.
Okay, this concept of self-care is so new, but it just shows that it's so important because they've forgotten to take care of themselves. That's why these mental health conditions arise more.
Yeah.
So when we talk of teens, like there's like a lot of pressure academically, and then on top of that, extracurricular activities, and then having to study when they get back home and tuitions. So there's like a lot of pressure on them, right? So how would they possibly balance their academic pressure and the social expectation and taking care of themselves?
Maintaining a routine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
and
it.
stick to it.
Yeah, you have to maintain a routine. I mean, there's no easy way out. But of course, making a routine sometimes is very difficult because we might prioritize self-care too much. But we kind of have to like maintain a routine for ourselves and be realistic, be practical with that. And that's how we can manage stress, how we can manage school life, academics, and social life. So that's how we balance that out. Maintaining a routine, basically.
You were saying something about self-diagnosis, right?
Self-diagnosis. What other
This is
kind of
something that's very people menta because mental health has become so
Prevalent.
Mtuta
It's like a
talks
trend.
about, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like a
it's like
trend
a
now.
trend.
So there are a lot of mental health enthusiasts out there. I'll
Mental
just
health
call them
enthusiast,
that.
yeah.
They will be talking about mental health a lot in social media or whatever it is. And sometimes they kind of give out the wrong information. And sometimes people have this tendency to self-diagnose. Have you ever seen reels in which, they show us if you're able to kind of stick till the end of the video or something, then you have ADHD or you have OCD or whatever it is more. And that's very wrong, okay?
Yeah.
And you're not going to self-diagnose because at times we as people are often very unreliable narrators of our own experiences.
Yeah.
Because just think about our life as well. How many times in our life where we thought that it was her problem, but as we're like experiencing and unpacking certain experiences, realize, oh, maybe I was the toxic one. Right?
Yeah.
So that's how, if you're not, let's not self-diagnose. Like if you feel that you're struggling with a mental health condition, always, always, always seek a mental health professional.
And also regarding that self-diagnosing part, I'm just sharing. Remember when
Yeah,
we were
please.
studying?
Yeah.
Like when
Oh,
we were
yeah, yeah.
during our studies, we had to study these disorders, right? And so we'd feel like there's this hair pulling disorder and this
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that.
yeah.
We were like, we have all of that. I have this disorder.
Biting.
Yeah.
Calling people
OCD,
bipolar.
yeah,
Yeah.
bipolar. We have all of that.
Yeah.
It's very easy, yeah. So even
Yeah.
after you self-diagnose, you're like, I have this problem.
But most often it's just like normal day-to-day stuff.
I mean, even sometimes when I see reels, especially on Instagram, if you have these characters or you have these behavioral traits, then you are ADHD.
Yeah.
Which is so wrong.
Yeah.
Or you have OCD. And so I've personally diagnosed myself with ADHD because through what I've seen, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm like this. So unless it's like you're getting that feedback from a professional, I mean, it's not.
But people say this all the time. I've heard this a lot, like people saying that they have OCD. I think OCD is something that they see all the time.
That's
Just
what I'm
because we
saying,
like to
people-
keep
yeah,
things clean,
clean.
they're
And
like,
it's not
OCD.
that, okay? OCD is very complex. There's a lot of assertion, compulsion. It's not just because you like things clean does not mean that it's OCD. Maybe you just like things clean. It's just that. And don't believe everything that you see on social media, okay? Let me tell you. Because especially regarding to mental health, remember the psychology says quotes? Psychology says if you dreamed about someone last night, they're in love with you. Like, dude, psychology didn't say that anywhere.
They're just quotes they made up.
Yeah. By someone who's not from the mental health field.
So how can, like we've spoken about how teens can help a fellow teen by referring them to mental health, but how can parents play a role in making sure that their children live in a healthy and supportive environment where if they do suffer from mental health, like they're able to seek the help they need?
I think when it comes to parents, parents play an important role because they kind of act as role models for us, especially for not just teens, but also like
For the
people,
children, yeah.
children and these early adolescents people. They kind of act as role models in the way that how certain parents behave at home, they're going to kind of
Pick up.
model that behavior. So how emotions are expressed, how conflicts are resolved, they're going to pick up on that and they're going to like maybe model that behavior later on. And there's actually this attachment theory, okay? This is more relevant towards childhood where they speak a lot about how the certain attachment that we had with our parents in our early childhood kind of informs the future partner that our future basically romantic partner that we might choose and all that more.
Yeah.
So early attachment kind of informs our later.
So the kind of relationship you have at a younger age, yeah. So that kind of determines the relationship
you're
you
going to
have
have
with other
with
people
Okay.
in a romantic way.
Okay. So, but how, see, my point is how can we create a more, since there's a lot of contradictory, right, as to should parents show their emotions and how should they show their vulnerability in front of their children, or should they act as a role model and just be strong and push through? But there's like, when we ask teens, they're like, I wish my mother showed me a little more vulnerability or give me more validation, because there's like, they lack affection, or so they resort to other, they fall into other problems. And there's also the other aspect as to how parents should be perceived like strong, very dependable, and that we can depend on tough situations. How do you think parents should go about issues like this?
Yeah, I think when we look at parents, we always expect them to be perfect.
Yeah.
But also parents are trying to just navigate. they're parents for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying to like figure it out, and they're like, how do I raise my child? And sometimes in that process, they might not be very, very vulnerable. They might think that, okay, I don't want to show my emotions to my child. I don't want to think I'm weak.
Yeah.
But that's also like, like how people of older generations, maybe that's how they think and that's how they were brought up. So they follow that. It is important for parents to be vulnerable too. Like Joe said, like it's very important for them to model behavior that they would like their child to uh, behave in more. So long, if they want their child to be more open about their emotions more, so parents they have to be like willing to talk to the child,
Take that step.
take that step. So they can't just you can't just expect your parents. Yeah, of course we can't be so hard on our parents also.
Yeah.
But they're not trying. I think one thing is maybe from our end, we can always talk to them.
Yeah.
Instead of just talking
Reach
among
out.
us and like among our friends, like go talk to them, tell them that,
This is what I'm going through.
yeah, exactly.
And the sooner that we realize that our parents are also humans with their own set of challenges and all of that, the sooner we kind of stop blaming our parents for everything.
Everything.
As well.
Everything that's going wrong with you, right?
Because they also have their own struggles,
Yeah. I don't know about scenarios now, but when I was in school, right, getting sent to a counselor was a means of discipline rather than a means for you to help cope with your problems. So when someone is being sent to the counselor, that means that girl has done something. She has bunked class, or maybe she has done something she shouldn't have. But what do you think is the role of educational institution? Because if it's just a means of discipline, nobody's going to reach out, right?
Yeah.
So what are the roles of educational institution in fostering a healthier environment for teenagers?
That's what, okay. You were lucky enough to have a counselor, but most schools, Shani, they don't have that.
They don't have.
So please do have a counselor. It's very important to promote well-being, because having a counselor, they're going to know when or who to reach out to more. We had a counselor, and that really helped us. I remember we
In
had
11,
these
12.
so many things that I did for us, and that kind of shaped where we are now, right?
We even did a career test, and I think that kind of helped us because we both were like from the science stream. And according to that test, when we highlighted our abilities, nothing was related to science.
Okay.
But it was nice. It was nice. Having a counselor, I think it's important to have one. And it doesn't really mean that they're just there to discipline, to tell you that you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
But they're there to support you. They're basically there to help you, because like when you're growing up, and especially during your teenage years, it's a period where there is so much change, like dramatic changes. So having a counselor will really help you like go through those challenges. Yeah.
And remember, they even planned a program for us regarding handling stress during exams.
Yeah, how would
2-3 day program regarding that as well.
Suppose if I were to go through an anxiety attack or a panic attack, how would I, how would I
Handle that.
handle that situation?
So I think basically there are many techniques, okay, that various counselors kind of work with different clients, and that's going to be very unique to certain clients. But the one thing I just want you guys to remember, is don't believe everything that you think. Well, how many times have I thought that she was mad at me, but then later she was like, "Hey, Jose, what's up?" And whatever I was thinking, it was not really true. Okay. It was just all in here. I'm not going to say everything is all in here, but it was just my thinking that kind of distorted.
We perceive things very differently. Same situation, but we perceive things very differently.
What are the other healthy ways of coping with mental health?
Try staying in the present a little bit more. See, when someone is experiencing anxiety, okay, their awareness, their attention is all up here. Take care. That's why I think you've seen this meme regarding therapists and everything, where they're always asking people, and how did that make you feel?
Yes.
You've seen those, right? See, why that is important is because when we're experiencing anxiety, we're choosing not to experience our emotions, and that's why we're all up in here. But when we start looking at an emotion, it kind of calms us down. So sit with your emotions a little bit, because that's kind of take you to a place of self-discovery. Okay. And that's what I usually do. I'm going, yes, I do ask people, how did that make you feel?
How did that make you feel? So you're one of them.
But it's not always about that question, but that kind of question is really important, because we hardly ever sit with our feelings.
So we're losing touch with our emotions, and it's like messing up with our brain.
Yeah, and try to stay in the present a little bit more. Use your senses, things you see, things you touch, things you hear, things you smell. They kind of ground us in the present moment.
You were saying something about going through traumatic experience and how it affects your brain, right? Could you just please elaborate that again to our viewers and listeners?
Just a bit more trauma.
Yes.
Of course, like basically, okay, there are different approaches, different ways of understanding this, and there are with different ways there are also a little bit of different limitations to understanding it. But what I was saying to you earlier was that trauma actually kind of change your brain structure as well. Okay, it kind of change your brain structure as well. And trauma or traumatic experiences in the brain, it operates on this principle of connection or dissociation. So let's say some like us, let's say we're like able to do stuff we're able to carry on with our daily activities. Okay, let's just say this is your brain, this is the lower part of your brain, and this is the upper part of your brain. Someone like us right now, maybe who's like very able to do our daily activities, we are in a state of connection right now. Take care. But someone who's experiencing traumatic memories or basically who's just recalling a traumatic event, there might be in a state of dissociation. So there's this flip, okay? There's a disconnection between the upper part of your brain and the lower part of the brain.
Okay.
See, so when someone is in connection, the brain is like this. But when it's dissociating, the brain kind of flips like this. There's no connection between the lower and the upper part of the brain.
So how do we heal from that? Does our brain go back to this?
Yeah. So basically, therapy becomes a very important part here, and it's going to take a lot of process, especially if it's a lot of work, especially if it's someone who's undergone through very kind of complex trauma. And trauma is not just PTSD, okay? And although it did start with that lens, it's just not PTSD. There are a lot of complex traumas, and working with your therapist, a lot of work with your therapist is kind of bring you back to where maybe you once were before the traumatic event happened.
So
Does that make
speaking of, it makes sense. Do you have a specific exercise you recommend to your clients, maybe coming to you with anxiety or depression, like a specific meditation or some kind of a mantra you give to them?
Like I said, okay, there's like I work with different clients, so I use different kind of techniques for each of them. That's what I'm saying. Okay, try to stay in the present a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, just that.
Just stay in the present.
Like what I was saying earlier. Okay, especially someone who's going through an anxiety, a panic attack. Basically, let's say someone is going through a panic attack. It's very important to ground them. This is a very common exercise, very readily available. Even in social media and films, you'll see this. The five things you're able to see,
Yeah.
4 things you're able to touch, 3 things you're able to hear, 1 thing you're able to, or 2 things you're able to smell, 1 thing you're able to taste. This really kinds of help people who might be experiencing a panic attack. You're going to do this very slowly, though. You're not going to say, "Hey, you name me 5 things you can see," and all that. You're going to do this
You'll
very
have them name these.
Yeah. I'll have them name these.
Oh,
So I'll be sitting down with them. I'll just be asking them, can you just tell me what are the 5 things that you can see right now? I'll be going it in a very slow manner,
Easy.
according to that
Yeah.
pace.
So that helps them ground
That
them.
helps them ground them, especially for someone who's experiencing a panic attack.
Yeah.
That really kind of helps them stay like
Grounded. In the
decrease
present.
the experience
Yeah.
of the panic attack.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good one.
Mm.
So we've already spoken about roles of parents, right, and fostering. We've touched most of it. Like one is being more vulnerable and trying to open up, and if not the parents, then the children can do the same. And then what are the other ways a parent can foster a healthy environment for teenagers? We already spoke on being vulnerable and trying to open up, and then I want to know more from you guys. How can they foster a more healthier atmosphere for teenagers at home?
Encourage, I guess.
I mean, it starts from them of being vulnerable, being opening up. It starts.
That's where it starts.
So now,
And we were talking about eating disorders right before. And especially some things like, let's say you're experiencing an eating disorder, a lot of involvement from your family member actually kind of decreases the kind of duration of the disorder as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of the support that you get from them also, the familial support and all of that kind of also aids treatment as well.
Okay.
There are many ways, okay, like it's a very complex kind of thing which is going to be very unique to people more.
yeah. But basically, Kito Bagi mentioned before, like opening up, being more vulnerable. It starts from there. Let's do that first.
Yeah.
That's the first step.
Yeah, first.
Take that initiative first.
So what about diagnosis? Like when and where can teenagers seek help when they are going through mental health issues?
Okay. So under the district mental health program, okay, So we do have psychologists, we have counselors, we have a team of psychologists, social workers, psychiatrists, medical officers, community nurses, psychiatric nurses. So when you do want to seek professional help, you can always visit your nearest district mental health team. All right. Now they sit in the district hospital of each district, so you can go visit them. We also have MIMHANS actually.
Okay.
So we have our own team who sits there, and then we also have people from MIMHANS, so the professionals from MIMHANS. So even in Civil Hospital Shillong, you have
Adolescent counselor.
adolescent counselor, you have a psychiatric
Psychiatrist.
unit there. So you can always go there, go to a professional if you would want that help, and if you need diagnosis, you will have to get it from a professional.
Yeah.
So these are some of the places, and in fact, right now, I don't know if you've heard about Telemanas. It's a tele-mental health helpline.
Yeah. 14410.
14410. Yeah. So you don't even have to like leave your room. You can just dial the number 14410, and you'll get connected to a counselor. And this operates from Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So use that, and it's free.
And it's free.
It's free.
Yeah, because when we speak about mental health, like most of people are hesitant. Like, what about those who are not fortunate enough to seek professional help? I mean, a lot of initiatives have been taken by the health department to make sure that it is accessible to everyone in need of a counselor or an expert help. Yeah.
And basically, that's why we have Telemana, so that people like for coming from remote areas, people where it's difficult to travel.
To travel.
Yeah. So we're able to bridge that gap, and we can easily connect to a professional. Yeah.
Okay. So that's right, dear listeners and viewers. If you are going through a mental health problem and you feel like there's a need for you to seek for professional help, there is a toll-free helpline number which we provide to you in a link in our description, 14410. It is available from Monday to Friday, if I'm not mistaken, from
Monday to Saturday.
Monday to Saturday, and from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
7
p.m. Oh,
7 p.m. right now.
Okay, wow, they've extended. So yes, so 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and you can select any language you feel comfortable, right? Khasi, Garo, Hindi, Banar, and English. Yes. So please reach out, and remember, you're not alone. Life can be overwhelming to all of us, right? And just take that one step in towards admitting that you are going through something and seeking help, right? So how can, just speaking of that, reaching out, there's a lot of fear for a person to open up, or just like, hey, I'm going through something. How can we help teens overcome the fear of actually talking to someone about their mental health?
Yeah, fear. When we talk about fear, first we have to understand like the root of the cause, like where did that fear come from? So sometimes it might be because of a bad experience. So you might have like, maybe we're friends, you opened up to me and I'm like, I made fun of you.
Yeah.
Or maybe I went behind your back and I'm like, she said this, she said that.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you might have visited a professional and you might have not clicked with the professional. So that fear can also arise from that particular problem. Again, because of stigma, there's that fear that, and that's why we don't want to really open up about our mental health problems. So how do we overcome that?
Asking herself also. How do we overcome that?
This one bad experience is not always going to determine, it's not always going to be one bad experience. Does not always mean that it's always going to be a bad experience. That generalization part, break that. It might not have worked with that. Maybe there's another professional that might work for me, kind of a thing. And also trust the professional, because these are people who have actually been trained in providing mental health support, so they're not going to judge you. They're going to create supportive spaces for you, and they're going to help you at times take accountability and responsibility for actions. They're going to push you, and they're not going to push you when you're not ready. They're going to know when and how to push you when needed for personal growth, basically.
Yeah. They're there to guide you. They're not there to give you advice, but they're there to guide you and help you through that process of healing.
Speaking of that, there's a misconception also about going to counselors. Like, they're going to give you solutions. Like, this is what you're going to do. I'm going through this depression. Okay, you do this. Behave like this from now onwards. And they fail to understand that it's a very difficult and long, complex process that you actually have to go through. And solutions don't come from the experts.
It's going to come from the client.
It's going to come from the clients.
It's more about bringing in that perspective. More.
Yeah, it's about tapping into your potentialities, your abilities.
If they're asking you, like, do I go this? Do I go this? The counselor might going to ask
How
you,
do you feel?
what do you think? So they're going to kind of bring you in this perspective, so that later on, when you're experiencing this, also later on when you're experiencing some sort of difficulty, you're able to kind of do that outside the therapeutic
So you have to be
space, kind.
independent, basically.
So it's not for like, hello, I need advice.
Yeah, it's not.
Just helping you unlock these issues and traumas that
And
you're
if
going
it's someone who's doing that, maybe that's kind of red flags.
through. Red flags. That is not. Nobody should tell you what to do. I mean, it's within ourselves, right? Everything
Yeah.
is within. We have the ability deep within us. Somebody just needs a little more push and a little bit more help to figure that out, to tap into our ability, more, basically.
Yeah, and we're always pathologizing stuff, thinking more, but then you just got to realize that people are actually very resilient.
Yes.
It's what you're saying. We
Yeah.
just need to tap into
Your
that
ability.
potential
Yeah.
and lock that.
Unlock. It's like the key. So you guys just have the key. So, I mean, do you want to share any personal experiences relating to mental health?
I think
Something
like
like-
everyone else, I did experience mental health challenges when I was growing up because I was in an environment in which I never quite really felt safe, you know. So that's why the safety part when I was defining mental health was important. I did have challenges, and this really it did went on for quite a bit. And when my parents kind of noticed that, and they removed me from that environment, that's when everything starts falling into place, I guess. So that's why the parents' role now,
Yeah,
my
it's very
parents
important.
noticing that was really important for me from getting out of that environment. And at that time, it was very hard for me to kind of talk about it. And even though my parents did notice it,
Yeah.
we quite never really talked about
Never
what was it
acknowledged.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying having at that time we didn't have a counselor like in that environment. Sorry, I think I'm pointing out. But then that's what I'm saying. Having a counselor maybe in that environment could have helped me a lot at that time.
Okay. So we did not mention this, but what are the like signs, like definite signs of a person actually going through stress, depression, or anxiety? Like so for a person to notice, like these are, okay, this person is going through, like what are the
Okay,
signs?
let's talk about depression since I feel like many
Yeah,
of us are
going through.
are saying, "Oh, I'm depressed, I'm
Yeah, yeah.
depressed."
Like
Right?
what are the definite signs?
There are so many criteria. Okay, being depressed does not mean just you're sad. Yes, it's a major component of depression, but it's not always just sadness. There's your lack of interest in your maybe activities that you want enjoyed, right?
So yeah, there are three cardinal features that
Yeah,
we
yeah,
look for
yeah.
in depression. So one is sadness, fatigue, and one which we say anhedonia, which is
Yeah,
basically
anhedonia.
lack of interest. So lack of interest in those activities which you were interested in, and suddenly now you're like, "I'm not interested." But it's not that easy, okay? Not just because you don't have any interest in anything anymore doesn't mean you have depression. It's more complex than that. But these are the three features that you see in a person with depression.
And there's a time, the duration as well.
The duration, yeah.
minimum would be experience them for a period of 2 weeks. Like this has been going on continuously every day for the minimum. That is the minimum criteria for 2 weeks.
So I always hear terms of like seasonal depression.
Yeah, which
What is that?
Yeah.
What is seasonal depression?
seasonal depression, like as the name suggests, certain changes in the weather can cause a person to kind of fall into episodes of depression.
Okay.
So, yeah, so sometimes this is usually during winter season when it gets quite
Cold.
yeah. So they kind of go in that place of depression.
So
as well.
interesting how our human mind is so complex and
Yeah.
it's influenced greatly by our
So many,
society
yeah.
and so many things. So I feel like with that we should wrap up today's episode. We've spoken about so much. I hope the listeners and viewers out there has picked up a lot of information from our experts we have here today. And if you again, I'll mention this again. If you feel like you need the help or you feel like you need someone to talk to, please reach out to your nearest district health centers. Or maybe you can just call a toll-free helpline number, that is 14410. We will be providing that in a link below. And thank you so much for joining with us today, for your insights and your expertise on this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So thank you to the viewers and listeners also out there. Please tune in for our future episodes. And yeah, thank you so much. This is Adolescents Unfiltered. Signing off.